Welcome to Lead Different.
Why not leadership? Why not lead different?
Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest today. Edward Larrañaga is the president of the Catholic Foundation of the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, where he leads with a deep sense of faith-driven purpose. His work centers on empowering generosity, guiding donors, parishes, and schools to build lasting financial foundations that sustain the church's mission. Known for his compassionate hands-on leadership, Ed blends service, stewardship, and spiritual vision to ensure the light of the gospel continues to shine in his community. Rooted in compassion and guided by a personal approach, Ed believes true leadership begins with listening and serving others. His work is about more than managing assets. It's about empowering generosity, building trust, and helping donors fulfill their calling to make a lasting impact. Inspired by the words of Pope Francis, grace is not part of consciousness. It is the amount of light in our souls, not knowledge nor reason. Ed sees leadership as an act of grace, one that illuminates, lives through faith, purpose, and action. So without any further ado, let me introduce you guys to Ed Larrañaga. Welcome to the show, Ed. How are you?
I'm doing great, Dan. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic, Ed. It is so good to see you. So good to have you on the show. You are one of the leaders that I definitely admire and look up to. The work that you do for the Catholic Foundation and for the community, the Catholic community in New Mexico is outstanding. And I'm just pleased to be able to have you on the show and share your brilliance, your wisdom, and some of your philosophy with our listeners.
Likewise, I'm happy to be here, Dan.
So Ed, I said a mouthful in the introduction, but you've been around a long time, and you wouldn't be able to tell by his youthful appearance, but Ed has a lot of experience under his belt. You started out in the banking industry, Ed. Why don't you take us through the transition, how you got started? Tell us a little bit. I know you're a New Mexico State Aggie, which you guys are licking your wounds right now from a football game that happened a couple of weeks ago. But tell me a little bit more about your background.
Well, I'm born and raised here in Albuquerque and New Mexico, and we have our families. Both my mom and dad's side of the families had branches outside, about an hour to an hour and a half away from Albuquerque, and so I kind of grew up in that environment as well, but mainly in Albuquerque, and went to St. Pius High School and went down to New Mexico State University, where you can enjoy the win for a while, all the logos while they can. It's been a long while, so enjoy it while you can. But then after college, worked. First job out of college was actually with Sherwin-Williams Paint Company, and had a few other jobs that brought me back to Albuquerque. I lived outside of the state for a little while, and back once we had my wife and I were pregnant with our first daughter, and with our first child, and we ended up coming back to Albuquerque, and I wanted to find a job that somewhere where I could hopefully move up within the organization and not have to move out of Albuquerque. I love Albuquerque. I love New Mexico, and want to try and make it a better place for myself and for my family. My parents come from large families, so I have a lot of extended family, and we're very close. That definitely helps with many different things, but definitely the faith aspect of it is a big part, probably the biggest, obviously. I ended up working for a bank, for Bank of America, and worked for them till they divested, and ended up, in the banking industry. Worked for Bank of Albuquerque, was the recipient of that divestiture of branches, which is part of BOK Financial, headquartered out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Worked for them for a number of years in their private bank, ran the private bank, took a short hiatus, actually, went to work for a commercial insurance company, the Lujan Agency, and worked for them for about 2 years. Had an opportunity to go back to the bank, to Bank of Albuquerque. Was on the board of directors for the bank. Also was running the wealth management group, which took care of a lot of the private banking piece, trust management, and portfolio management, which fits right in line with what I do right now at the foundation. But I was on the board for the foundation. I was asked to serve on the board of trustees in 2009, and served on the board for about 4.5 years. And the opportunity came up. The president was leaving and retiring. We were looking for a new one, and I was fortunate to be able to accept that position, and that's what I've been doing for the past almost 11 years.
And you're doing a great job at it, Ed. Man, there's a lot of overlap there. I did not realize that one of your experiences was at the Lujan Agency. Our good friend Jerry Lujan, who is a former partner at the Lujan Agency. Did you guys spend time there at the same time?
We did. We actually did. It was
that is fantastic.
Great experience. Dan, I never thought that was something that I'd want to do. And after talking with them and they were looking for certain things, and thought that I would be able to help with that. And I just really believed that's where God was leading me. And it was a wonderful experience. I actually made a comment to a former associate at the bank that I would probably retire from there. That's how much I loved that. And I really thought that would be something that I would do for a long time. And just the way that things work, I had another opportunity, and it was a really good opportunity for me. So.
Well, it sounds like, when you've been in business for as long as you and I have, and been in the business world, our resume starts getting long, right? And you started mentioning Sherwin-Williams, and then Bank of America, Bank of Albuquerque, the Lujan agencies, coming back into banking, and then ending up at the foundation. The other thing you mentioned that's a lot of fun that I love is you mentioned that big extended family. Not a week goes by that I don't run into one of your cousins, Ed. Ed Larrañaga is related to a lot of people. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a young man here at the Newman Center the other day, Will Toppy, and he said, "Yeah, I just had breakfast with Ed the other day," and mentioned that we had come up in conversation. So that's got to be helpful to you in your work, Ed.
Yes,
that big network.
It is a little bit, and actually, Will's actually related to me distantly, but. Yeah, just the way that goes.
It's just the way that works. Yeah, I was working with the fundraising group at Holy Child, and your cousin was on the board there. Right. And then I went to work with Enora. They hired me to do a leadership workshop for them, and your cousin was on the board there. Different cousins, but they happen to be brother and sister to each other. So that happens a lot. And the other thing that, you can't go too far without hearing good things about you, Ed, and the work that you've done and the impact that you've made. What do you mentioned the big family growing up on the ranches, and those got to be some great values that were instilled in you at a young age. Good just family values. Tell me, what are the values that stay with you from your early days, playing on the ranch with your cousins, and learning from your parents and uncles and grandparents? What are some of the things that you still carry with you?
Oh gosh, Dan, I would probably say faith. I would, and family and hard work. Those three things. Everything we did, before we ate a meal, we prayed. When we made sure that we always went to mass. We have a church out on our ranch. It was not, it's a kind of a family church, but we always went to mass. The faith was actually something that was lived. It wasn't something that was just talked about, or that you watched certain things. It was actually something that you did. The family, I was always made to understand that I respected my elders, that if I was at a place where I saw an aunt or an uncle, that I went up and told them hi, shook my uncle's hands, and gave my aunts a hug, and told them hello. I learned a valuable lesson. I was probably about 10 or 11 years old, and I was actually the last one going out to the ranch. I was actually the last one out of our car from my immediate family, and my cousins threw me a football, and before I went into the ranch house and saw everybody else, and so I kind of got distracted and went out and started playing football with them. And one of my aunts asked my dad, "Well, where's Edward? Did he not come?" Well, I'll spare you the gory details, but I got in a little bit of trouble, and found out really quickly how important it was that I made sure that I went and told everybody hi when I got somewhere right away. And that was impressed upon me physically, and so it was important for me to be able to do that. But and then just hard work at the ranch. I mean, I mentioned this to people because I have such a love for ranchers in our ranch, but I hated the ranch when I was growing up because it was a 4-letter word. It was work. And every time we went there, now I did get to see my cousins, so there was some fun always there, but it was always work. We'd leave Albuquerque when it was still dark, and we'd get out there and start working right away. We'd stop for lunch, and then we'd work a little bit after lunch, but it was always work. We were always fixing things. We're always working on the field, things like that. But you learned about that without even really knowing what you were learning. And later on in life, obviously those things come to bear, and you really don't know what you have, and then you start looking at it and start seeing things, and you really appreciate it. And I feel truly blessed growing up in the family that I did. And I always thought, as everybody does, I always thought that my normal was everyone's normal. And I remember being in the 8th grade, and some friends of mine asking me if I was could go with them to the movies on the weekend. And I remember telling them no, and they said, "Why not?" I said, "I'm going to the ranch." And they said, "You have a ranch?" And at that moment, I remember thinking, oh yeah, maybe not everybody has a ranch. So, growing up in those areas, that people married people, and they all from those areas had ranches. And so you kind of grew up in that environment. But, I was kind of from both. So I had both best of both worlds there. But those things were so valuable to me. And I am just blessed with them.
I love the 3 things that you brought up: faith, family, and work. And I remember similar experience with, there's always that aunt that asks for you, right? When you forget. For me, it was asking for some extra celery in my soup. And I remember my aunt just very careful. She went and grabbed a thing of celery and chopped it up really nice, put it in my soup, and then it was too much, and then so I didn't like the soup, and then I said I don't like it anymore, and my mom heard about it, and you don't just make your aunt. My mom comes from a big family, and there was about 20 of us 20 kids sitting around the table. I got escorted out and shown what happens when you do that. So thanks for sparing us the gory details, but those are such great values, faith, family, and working hard. And no doubt you've worked hard your entire life, because everywhere you've gone, you've made an impact, and you've made a difference. And in your current work as president of the Catholic Foundation, so you went from a transition from being on the board to being the president and running the organization. You've been there now 11 years. So probably soon after, not long before I came back to Albuquerque about 9 years ago. You had just taken that position. What did you bring from your banking, insurance, and experience in other industries that you're using today? Obviously, you mentioned you worked in trusts and things of that nature, so from the financial side. But what are some of the other skills that came with you when you came from into the position that you're in now?
Oh gosh, technical skills. There's technical skills there from trust management, portfolio management that has to do with investments. We do a lot of that at the foundation. But honestly, probably the biggest thing, and one of the things that I remember in my banking days was just the fact of being able to work with people, and I love that. I love helping people. I always thought that was what I was supposed to do. I've always had that servant leadership kind of mindset, and always wanting to serve, and that part of it was even before. It stems. I don't even know how far back it stems. I do remember that when I was a freshman in college, I was very fortunate that I always had a summer job with my dad. Typically, my dad has done a number of different things. He's an entrepreneur and has, a vast experience with many different things. But one of those things was he got his GB98, his general contractor's license, when he was building a building. And I always had work during the summer, usually doing some type of construction, learning how to do all of that. And I remember getting to be a freshman at New Mexico State, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to try and get my own job this summer. I don't want any help from my dad. I'm going to get my own job. And I did. I was selling books on 100% commission, door to door, in Smithfield, North Carolina. So one of the things that taught me, you learn so much about people, but you learn a lot about yourself. You're by yourself all day long. You don't have anybody to blame when you can't knock on that next door because it's tough. You've been shut down. A lot of resilience, but you just learn. I love people, and learning how to deal with people, all types of people, is really something that's been a blessing to me that God has provided in my life through a lot of those experiences. And having that really helped coming into the foundation, dealing with donors, dealing with priests, dealing with the archbishops, dealing with different people that I deal with. That has been a thing that is very important. And even at the bank, I remember at one point asking the president of our bank had asked me, Ed, is there anything we can provide you, some training or anything that we can do for you to help you, be successful? And I said, gosh, I think I might want some more credit training or something. And he said, really? He kind of was like, and I said, yeah, I kind of feel like that. He said, he told me, Ed, he goes, I just want to tell you something. He goes, I don't want you to forget this, but you have something that is really hard to train, and that's that you're good with people. And I remember him telling me that, and I thought, oh wow. He said we can train people to do credit. You can just learn. You can put it into a program and do things, but dealing with people is very, very difficult to teach and to learn. So I always remember that, and I always thought that was something, and it's proven to be very valuable here and everywhere. And I think it's just part of that, I guess, part of that servant leadership and wanting to serve and help other people.
That's a great topic you bring up, servant leadership, Ed, because this is the Lead Different podcast. So we want to talk about leading different. What does servant leadership mean to you?
Well, it goes back to scripture that those that want to lead need to serve others. If you want to be first, you need to serve, and which basically means you need to humble yourself, and you need to find out what other people need, what their needs are, by listening to them, and hopefully, and then being able to provide those within an organization. That might mean, finding out what somebody needs to be successful in their specific role at the organization, and then trying to help them with that. Always wanting to try and help them to become better. And sometimes that might mean stopping doing what I'm doing at a particular point and actually going and physically helping them with something. Other times it may mean getting out of their way. And sometimes as a leader, that seems almost counterintuitive. If you think you might know something, sometimes getting out of their way is a great thing, and letting them grow and thrive and in the position that they're in. So it takes on different forms, but it really comes down to the fact of trying to help them to be better and to serve them in that capacity.
Now we can't tell by looking at you, and thank you for that answer. That's really good. I appreciate it. But Ed, Smithville, North Carolina, in what year?
Smithfield, North Carolina. It was 1980. It was the summer of '89.
So in the summer of '89,
excuse me, summer of '85.
Summer of '85. So I can't imagine in Smithfield, North Carolina, there were a lot of people that looked like you that were knocking on people's doors. So probably that added another challenge. And when you talk about lessons learned, you not only had to overcome, you're a stranger knocking on their door, but you look nothing like the neighbors probably that they had around there. I'd love to hear, what's your favorite story from that summer? Maybe overcoming something, or you mentioned the resilience, and absolutely door-to-door sales. I've done it. I think anybody who's in sales, if you haven't done your time doing door-to-door, you haven't paid your dues. So you definitely did that. But what's a fun story that you could share with us from that time?
Oh, wow. I could probably write a book on that summer alone. I took a vehicle out there, and so they put you in a group. It's a college group, and there was a group of us from New Mexico State that went out. We went to sales training in Nashville for a week, and then after that, they tell you you're going to go somewhere else, and they're basically, they tell you you're going to Problemville, USA. And they won't tell you where you're going specifically, but they tell you you're going to Problemville, USA, and you have to solve problems. And we ended up going to Smithfield. Now, then they separate you by different locations within North Carolina. So it was me and two other young men that were in Smithfield. But when we were driving, I had a car. One guy had a truck, and then another guy just had his bike. So we're out there, and we were housing together. We have to find a place to live, and we were supposed to be in Dunn, North Carolina, and which isn't too far outside. Both Smithfield and Dunn aren't too far outside of Raleigh. And so we get to Raleigh, we go driving into Dunn, North Carolina, and it says, there's a big billboard back in 1985. It said, "Welcome to Dunn, North Carolina, KKK capital of the world." And I remember thinking, wow, that's interesting. I've never seen this billboard like that. We couldn't find any place to stay in Dunn. So they gave us a contact in Smithfield, and we stayed upstairs. A gentleman that owned a used car dealership had a house, and he was converting his upstairs into a rental thing, and it wasn't quite done, but it was good enough for us. No air conditioning in the middle of North Carolina in the summer, and we stayed there. The biggest thing, though, Dan, that happened to me that summer is within a month, both roommates had left. They couldn't do it. They solved their own problems. They for different reasons decided that they couldn't be there, and they ended up going back home. So I was in a place by myself, and it was a little tough. And one day I thought to myself, I'm going to go. There's a Catholic church there, obviously in North Carolina, not a huge Catholic population, especially back then. It's grown a little bit now, but I went to the Catholic church that was in Smithfield, and walked in and had a great day that day. Just made a visit, did some prayers, left, and had a great day of sales. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to start my day there again tomorrow. And I just went over, walked in the church, and then the priest that was there the day before, that he kind of had seen me. I think I had introduced myself to him. He said, "Ed, would you like to stay for Mass? I'm going to say Mass for a lady that's coming in a second. I said, sure, I'll stay for Mass. I'd love to. So stayed for Mass, and there's one other person in the church. Wasn't a very big church, but just her and I. And after Mass, he says, Ed, would you like to join Laura and I for a Danish and some coffee? And I said, sure. And I'd been looking at her the whole time during Mass, and I've been thinking to myself, boy, she looks familiar. But, you're over 2,000 miles away from home. Everybody kind of looks like somebody, especially when you're a little bit lonely. But he said, Laura and I walked up to her and I said, Sister Laura? And she looks at me and she says, you look very familiar. I said, Sister, you were my 7th grade teacher at Our Lady of Assumption Church and School in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And she says, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And I just, it was just amazing. And so I had somebody there that I had a connection with, and we had dinner a night or two and kind of got together. And then before too long, the group I was with didn't think it was really good for me to be by myself in an area. So they moved me down to the southern part of North Carolina. So, kind of went on with different other challenges and different things to do that summer. But that was an amazing thing that happened. And, just one of those things that happens. It's one of those God moments. And, that was an extremely interesting connection.
That is pretty cool. So your 7th grade teacher from middle school shows up in Smithfield, North Carolina. And I'm asked that it was only your 2nd time going to that church, and you get invited to breakfast. That is really cool. I bet it was amazing for her too to see you, and you guys probably had a great conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we hadn't seen her since, I think she left. She may have been there while I was in 8th grade, so it may have been one other year. But I mean, that had probably been, probably been 6 or 7 years since I had even seen her. So
yeah, and like me, you're blessed with tremendous height, Ed. So you probably were the same height, but just looked a little bit older, right? I know. I reached my maximum height in 8th grade, and then I stopped growing. I was taller than everybody in 8th grade, and then everybody just kept growing.
Since it's a Jubilee year of hope, I'll let you know that I'm still hopeful that I'm going to continue to grow. And I think there's a growth spurt in there somewhere. So.
Well, Ed, this is so fun. I'm really enjoying just hearing these stories. Recently I always like to talk about, and you talked about it's so funny because I always like to talk to our guests about their YOS, and it's a part of everything we do at Why Not Leadership. We start every client engagement with helping people discover their why operating system, and you're a guy whose why is make sense, which is you're a problem solver. And you talked about they solved their own problems. You went to your first sales training. They told you you're going to Problemville, USA, and your job was to solve problems. Well, the why of Make Sense is all about solving problems. And you've been doing that your whole life. You have a how of better way. So you're always looking for better ways in order to make sense of things. And then your what is contribute, which definitely shows in the charitable work that you do, plus the work that you do at the foundation. So, tell us a little bit about you found out your YOS through our mutual friend, Jerry Lujan, sometime back. How does that, and I know we've told stories, but I'd love for you to tell for the benefit of our guests and our listeners, how does your why of Make Sense, your how of Better Way, and your what of Contribute apply in the work that you're doing now and in the work that you've done in the past? How have you seen those patterns?
Gosh, I mean, it's just evident. It's almost like, when you go through it, it's almost, and when I did it, it was like, wow. I mean, it's surprising, and it's not surprising at all. You look at it and you go, yeah, that is absolutely me. And on a day-to-day basis, that's what happens here at the foundation. I mean, doing what I do. As the president, solving problems and looking at those things and trying to, and always trying to make it better. I'm always trying to make things better through every year, everything that we do, every event that we have, trying to see, is there a better way for us to do this? It's sometimes a little, we create our own problems by doing that sometimes, but it's always with the mindset of this is going to be better, and it's going to end up being better. And we're going through a conversion right now and finishing that up, and it's been a little bit of a struggle. Like most conversions usually are, but it's going to make us better afterwards. So, and that's going to allow us to take care of more people through the foundation. And that's how we look at this. I thought it was important enough. And after I realized and went through the process, I wanted my staff to go through it. So, we did that with all of our staff, and we've added a few people. So we brought them in afterwards and added them as well. And it's part of the culture here a little bit. We probably don't talk about it as often as we should, but it's just part of the culture. I mean, it's the things that we do all the time and every day, staff meetings, everything. So it's been a great help in helping manage and organize the foundation.
And I was blessed to be able to work with your team as you brought me in for the refresher. And as a matter of fact, I saw Vic at the foundation awards banquet. He checked my wife and I in, and I introduced myself and introduced him to my wife. And I said, by the way, Monica, I want you to know that Vic figured out at our workshop that he and I can get along. And it was something that was funny, because he's a person who has a why of right way, and he likes to do things by the book, follow processes and systems. And he knows that my how is to challenge the status quo, which is everything but follow systems and processes and break rules. But what a great insight he shared with us at the end of your workshop. He said, I found out I can get along with people like you. And it's truly about understanding each other, understanding that though we're wired differently, our relationship with each other doesn't have to be impacted. It's his relationship with rules is different than my relationship with rules, but not necessarily with each other. So that was a lot of fun, Ed. Thank you for that opportunity to work with your team. Let's talk about that event, though, because this foundation, when I looked at that number, I want to say last year you gave away, I think, $650 million in grants, and this year it was an even bigger number. So tell us about that number, because that's a huge number. And then I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about the foundation and how that number comes along.
Right. I wish it was 650 million. It was 650,000.
650,000. There we go. That's correct.
And this year was over 750,000. And that's just our competitive grant process that we have, that we open up every year. Next year in 2026, it will come up, but it'll be opened up in January through sometime in April is when we'll close that out. But that's our competitive grant process. We actually have other distributions that are designated for specific parishes and for specific schools and organizations. The total of distributions this past year is a little over 3.4 million. And since we started, I want to say we're I think around 36 million that we've given out since we started, which has been an amazing process. I mean, we will get to a certain point as we stay and as we grow, where we will end up have given out more than what or close to what our assets are. It's amazing, just the time value of money. We manage about 220 funds, most of those perpetual endowments. And so those funds continue to grow. We have an annual spend rate of about 4% is where we'd like to get to. That allows us to take that 4% and give that back out to those organizations, and also for our competitive grant process. That provides that 4%. It allows us, so if we earn 12% one year through our investments in the foundation or in the market, we are able to take that 12%. We take the 4% that we're going to kick out that year for our spending policy. Then we have a portion for inflation, for 1% for administrative fee to the foundation, but then the rest of it stays in those funds and continues to grow. And that's really the strong piece of that, is that you're not looking at an annual basis every year to try and say, okay, well, if the market was down, we can't give anything out this year. That's typically the time that you need it the most in your communities. So we really try and look at that on a 36-month basis and average that out, and so that we always, hopefully, always have a 4% spending policy that goes back out into the community. So it's really important to us.
Yeah, you're right. I wish that number were true, and it will be at one point, Ed. I don't know that we'll be around to see it, because these are perpetual endowments, so they'll continue to grow and they'll continue to give more. But still, that's a big number, especially for a community like New Mexico, which is not a high population. That's a lot of money. You're getting close to being able to give $1 million away per year. And I love that visual that you gave us of, you're almost at the giving away as much as you have in assets, which is it's a big accomplishment. What was the number, and I know you won't brag, so I'd just love to get a comparison. What was the number at, what was given away the first year that you took over, and how much has it grown? What is it? I know this year was over 700,000. So what was that number your first year? Oh,
it was probably close to between 300,000 and 400,000, something like that.
So it's almost doubled in the 11 years that you've been there. So 1 million is not too far away.
No, it's not. And as those things grow, also as we get, the word out to organizations, to individuals throughout the Archdiocese about how the impact of perpetual endowments, that really makes a difference. People don't know. They just don't know. And they oftentimes they don't know that there is a Catholic foundation. The ones that are kind of involved with their parishes, if they apply for grants or they hear those things, they'll hear our name out there, but they don't know a lot about the Catholic Foundation. And that's something for us that's one of the challenges that we're given, to try and make sure that gets out there more, so people understand who we are and how we help in their parishes and their communities.
Ed, one of the things that you're really good at is you get out in the community and you talk to people and you educate about exactly what you're talking about, how these things work and how to get them established. I know that I didn't know much about it, but now I know how much I don't know about it. So I've learned how much I don't know. But one thing I do know is that it's very easy to contact Ed and his team, and they will help you set up an endowment. We had an endowment at Holy Child Catholic Church where my daughter went to elementary school, but and with your help, we now have an endowment for the school. And that has started, and we've started getting donations. We got a major gift recently. What's the best step for someone, whether you're someone who has some money that you're interested in giving away and making it perpetual and creating an endowment and a fund, or whether you're an organization that wants to set up an endowment? What's the steps people can take, whether they're a Catholic school, church, organization, and they want to do something to perpetuate their giving in the community?
Yeah, probably the best thing to do is to just contact the foundation, either through our website or give us a phone call. We're at thecatholicfoundation.org is our website, and contact us. I'm willing to go out. I travel all over the Archdiocese, speaking to parishes and schools and letting them know how that process works and how it can really benefit them. And it's really something that you have to be really wanting, something that's going to be in the future. It's not something that is going to provide tons of benefit today. It's not something for kind of an emergency, but boy, the parishes that have established those years ago, that now have them established and they're receiving funds every year, it makes a big difference to them.
Thanks, Ed. No, that's really good, and we'll make sure when we'll put all that contact information in the show notes when we air. We'll make sure that people know how to get a hold of the Catholic Foundation. That's a win in itself. TheCatholicFoundation.org. How did you get? There are hundreds of Catholic foundations across the United States, but you got TheCatholicFoundation.org. Was that already there when you got there, and or was someone else really forward looking and got that URL?
We got that when I believe it was right before I came onto the board. The current staff of the foundation and the trustees and the board got that early on, and people do get it confused because there's .org, there's .com, there's all kinds of there's many different iterations of the Catholic Foundation or just Catholic Foundation. There's a lot of different iterations of that, so it's sometimes it can get a little confusing. But yes, for ours, we got that, and we make sure that we keep that. We felt like that's always been a good thing for us to have that all spelled out .org, and we've had it before I got here. So.
It's a really big win, and it's so important, right? Because our online presence is so important, and you guys have a great webpage and easy to navigate, easy to find out what's going on. I know that you were gracious enough to invite my wife and I to sit at your table for your awards luncheon, and I'd forgotten where it was or anything, and I just went to the website and found out everything I needed to know. So you guys are doing a great job running the website. Ed, as I'm hearing all of these stories, you've gone through a few transformations, I can imagine, throughout your life. You've had some decisions to make. As why not leadership, we always like to ask the why not question. What's a time in your life, Ed, where you said why not to something? What's a big decision you said, why not? Why not go ahead and do it? And you're so glad you did, because things have worked out differently and better because you said why not to something.
It's probably a couple of different times where that's been evident. I think probably the biggest has been just the decision to come to the foundation. It wasn't something that I had on my radar, and actually, I kind of, even though banking didn't define me at all, it was something that I had experience in, and that's kind of where I kind of, was able to find jobs and that type of thing, and stay connected in the community. And but coming to this position at the foundation has been transformative for me. In many different ways. And my faith is the most important thing in my life, and having that be part of my work as well it's fantastic. I mean, getting to pray before meetings, having that be a part of my daily life and my daily work is just a blessing. And so I just can't, we had somebody that somebody that was on our board at the time that I was applying for the job, and when I told her that I was applying for it, I hadn't mentioned it to a lot of different board members, and I told her, and I remember her looking me square in the eyes after Mass one Sunday, and she said, "Ed, God's been preparing you for this. You were what you did at the bank for so long. He's been preparing you for this. This is what you're meant to do." And I remember her saying that, and I just thought, wow, that's absolutely. And so I said, why not?
I forgot to hit the unmute button, Ed. Ed, that's a great answer. And I'd love to talk next about vocation. I was reading something over the weekend, and this quote really stood out to me. It says, "God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called." And it got me thinking about vocation. It sounds really like, it sounds like this person on the board saw that God had been preparing you for this. What was nerve-wracking? What made you nervous about coming into the position, and then where were you already qualified? As your fellow board member pointed out, and then where were you like, oh boy, what am I going to do? And things worked out because you God qualified you, right? He chose you for it, and then he qualified you for it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the quote, and then let's answer the question.
Oh, that's one of my favorite quotes. I love that. It really shows your faith in God when you do that, and that's one of the things, taking that step and taking that leap to be able to do that. I had some qualifications, obviously, from kind of on a technical and experience side with regards to investment management and estate planning, those types of things from a trust and a banking perspective. So I had that type of experience, and I had experience with people and those things, but didn't know a lot about working in a nonprofit, some of the things that you're able to do and not able to do. One of the things that's really difficult sometimes that people have a difficult time with is working within our church and working within the parishes and priests and archbishops and different people. You don't always see people kind of at their best sometimes. It just depends, because you're working with them a lot more on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to going to mass on the weekends or during the weekdays and seeing them in their roles and their vocations. So there's some difficulty with that as well. But it's one of those things that, a friend of mine, I part of what I have done as well is would teach would go during vocations time at St. Pius High School, and would go and talk to seniors during vocation week about lay ministry. And I tell them about a friend of mine that I had when I was in 7th and 8th grade and through high school, whose dad was probably one of the most intelligent people that I've ever known. He was from Sweden. He spoke 7 different languages fluently and was a physiology professor at the University of New Mexico, as well as some other universities over his career. And he was dying, and my friend told me that on his deathbed that the last words he told his son were, "Know and do God's will." And those things that I don't know that there's a more important or impactful quote or words that I've ever heard. And every time I read scripture, I go back, I just always look at that, and it requires action. And I always say that, the truest form of sincerity is action.
Right.
We can wish and want and do everything else, but what are you going to do? Know and do God's will. Knowing and doing God's will requires action. And here at when I took this position at the foundation, I really thought about that a lot, and I thought, this is what God wants me to do. And so every day I try and do that, try and figure out what his will is for me that day, and try and do it. So,
it's such a great quote, and there's such a big difference between knowing and doing, right? In today's world, we all know. Everything we need to know is sitting right in front of us on a keyboard, and all we got to do is punch it in. We can know everything, but what are you going to do with it, right? And doing it is the next best step. And you're right, action. Sometimes it's better to take action and then learn. I know that at Why Not Leadership, we say build a parachute on the way down. Sometimes you just got to take a step out of the plane, and guess what? When you've got the rest of your life to build a parachute, you build a parachute pretty fast, right? So you got to build it, and then that forces you into action. I've got one last question for you, Ed. It's around leadership. One of the reasons we exist at Why Not Leadership is, you mentioned it. You mentioned technical skills. So many times in life, people get promoted, and we see them get promoted based on their competency, not on their leadership. But there's a big difference between being able to build trusts and build financial plans and put allocate assets and doing those kinds of things. That's a technical skill, versus leading a foundation, leading a group of individuals or an entire community. What is your definition of what it's like to lead different? And I've seen some examples as I see you work with your team, and you've brought us around, you've worked with Jerry. What does it mean to you to lead different and to lead with a servant heart, as you mentioned earlier?
Dan, I think one of the things is always looking at the surroundings, at the things that God's put in your life, and going from there. It's not always the same. I mean, I led differently at the bank than I lead differently now. You have certain things given, based off of your organization that you're trying to achieve and that you're trying to do. And sometimes you're not able to do certain things at one place that you are at a different place. So being able to look at your environment that you're around, and then use those things and use the advantages that God's giving you there to do those things. And really, it's about the people, surrounding yourself with the right people. And it's so important, and being open to what God gives you. I mean, there's times where somebody, you go into an organization and you have certain people, and God's given you those people there, and you try and do your best to really help them achieve and be successful in their roles at the organization. And those are always different. I mean, they're always different depending on the people that you have, and the organizations that you're at, and where you're at. And I just think being open to that from God, and really asking him and seeking to know what his will is for you in those organizations and in those places and in those times. Could even be different times. I mean, it could be the same organization, just different times and different events, as we all know happened 5 years ago. We were in the same organizations, but we had to adapt during COVID and figure out how we were going to do things. And it's, you figure those things out, and you just go and you continue to move forward and just know and do God's will.
We didn't get much of a chance to talk about that, but talk about a time when we had to lead different. I really love that answer. And you are definitely leading different. You are definitely leading. You're definitely saying why not to a lot of things. And we're grateful in the New Mexico community. I know you have an impact on people. You have had an impact on people all over the country. So for our guests who are listening from, Australia, England, all parts of the world, or if you're other parts of the United States, Smithfield, North Carolina, if you're listening from there, make sure you give us a like. And I don't know if Miss Laura is still there. It'd be great if she's still there and she can give us a like and a comment in the comments. Guys, this is the Lead Different podcast. This is where we interview leaders like Ed who are doing things different and who are showing leadership in their community. We like to feature leaders like Ed because they really bring to life the ethics and the meaning of being a leader. So Ed, thank you for being on. If you like what you heard, please make sure and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you give us a like and share this podcast with your friends. We recently hit a milestone in terms of the number of subscribers. So we want as many subscribers on the channel. We want you to share this as much as you can so that other people can hear the stories from great leaders like Ed. Ed, what do you say we end the show on that note?
Why not, Dan?
Thank you so much, Ed. Really appreciate you being on. It's just like having a cup of coffee with you at one of the local coffee places here. And we really appreciated you sharing so much about your background, your experience, and how you're leading, because I think there's a lot of benefit to your words. So thank you, and have a great rest of the week. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate everything you do as well. God bless you.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.